So the cape goes on, right? It gets snapped super tight around your neck, and you are suddenly, literally, completely physically
Oh,
immobilized.
totally. You can't even move your arms.
Right. And the person standing behind you holds a pair of sharp metal shears. They meet your eyes in that giant mirror in front of you, and they ask this seemingly simple question. They just say, "So what are we doing today?"
And instantly, I mean, your heart rate just spikes.
It really does. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we're looking at a scenario that, well, every single person listening to this has experienced likely dozens or maybe hundreds of times in their life.
Yeah, it's one of those universally recognized moments of acute, low-grade panic in modern life. The sheer weight of that question when you're trapped in the chair is just staggering.
It's wild. So we are pulling our insights today from a really fascinating piece of source material. We have excerpts from a module called The Stylist's Chair, Mastering the Haircut Consultation.
Right, and we should probably establish right up front what this source text actually is, because it's interesting. It is an English language learning module.
Yeah, an ESL course.
Exactly. It's a curriculum designed to teach non-native speakers the vocabulary for, how to describe a haircut.
Look, on the surface, the source text we're using today is incredibly basic. I mean, it's literally teaching people words like trim and layers.
Which everyone knows.
Right. But what is fascinating here, and the whole reason we're doing a deep dive on this, isn't the vocabulary itself. A well-informed audience already knows what bangs are.
We all know what bangs are, yeah.
What's captivating is the sort of meta lesson hidden inside this module. It's the fact that even native speakers with decades of experience speaking English completely fail at using these exact words effectively when they sit in that chair.
Oh, we completely lose our grasp on our native tongue. It's like we forget how to speak.
Why does that happen?
Well, the reason for that is actually profound. The environment of the salon strips us of our usual conversational defenses.
Makes sense.
We are forced into a situation where we must translate a highly abstract, internalized vision of our own physical identity into actionable physical metrics for another person to execute.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
It is. And if we fail, the consequences are immediately visible on our own bodies.
Exactly. We are decoding the art of communication in spaces where our personal identity is literally on the line. Because if fear is driving this bad communication, how do we usually try to fix it?
We lean on industry jargon.
Right. We reach for the jargon. But as we're going to see today, jargon is a massive trap.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because our source material gives us the perfect behavioral case study to start with.
It does. The text introduces us to this hypothetical client named Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce is our everyman. I think we all have a little bit of Bruce inside of us when we walk into a salon.
So the scenario is outlined very simply in the text. Bruce is sitting in the chair, and he wants a simple trim.
Just a trim. It's just a trim. But he is experiencing a very specific, very acute fear. He is terrified that the stylist will cut, and I'm quoting the text here, too much off.
It is the universal anxiety, right? But let's look at the underlying psychology of Bruce's situation for a second.
Let's do it.
Because on the surface, a simple trim sounds innocuous. I mean, it sounds like the easiest request you could possibly make.
It really does.
But Bruce's fear of having too much cut off reveals a profound inherent power imbalance that exists the very second that cape goes around your neck.
It really feels like there is a massive power dynamic shift right when you sit down. Like you are physically trapped, they have the tools, and they're standing over you. Is that where the anxiety is really coming from?
That's the physical manifestation of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But to understand it deeply, we need to look at this through the lens of economics and organizational behavior.
Wait, really? Economics?
Yeah, seriously. What Bruce is experiencing in that chair is a classic high-stakes example of the principal-agent problem.
The principal-agent problem. Okay, I've heard this used in corporate governance, like with CEOs and shareholders. How on earth does that apply to Bruce and his split ends?
It applies perfectly, actually. So in economics, the principal-agent problem occurs when one person or entity, the agent, is able to make decisions or take actions on behalf of or that impact another person.
And that other person is the principal.
Right, the principal.
Yeah.
The dilemma arises when the agent is motivated to act in their own best interests, which are maybe contrary to those of the principal.
Okay, I follow.
And crucially, there is an asymmetry of information.
Okay, so map that onto the salon for me. Bruce is the principal.
Correct. Bruce is the principal. He is the one hiring in the service, and he's the one who bears the ultimate risk.
Right.
His overarching goal, his incentive, essentially, is risk mitigation. He wants a simple trim. He wants to walk out of that salon looking essentially like himself, just slightly neater. He wants to minimize change.
Right. And the stylist is the agent.
Exactly. Now, consider the stylist's incentives. The stylist is a trained professional.
Right. They have standards.
Yes. Their goals might include performing a service that adheres to industry standards of technical proficiency.
Yeah.
They want to remove damage.
Oh, sure.
They might want to demonstrate their artistic skill. They want the hair to be structurally sound so that when Bruce walks out, their work is a good advertisement for their business.
So Bruce's standard of success is like, my hair, but barely touched.
Right.
While the stylist's standard of success might be technically flawless, perfectly healthy hair.
Yeah.
And those two goals are on a total collision course.
They really are.
If Bruce has 2 inches of dead, split ends, the stylist, acting as a good agent of their craft, wants to cut 2 inches off. But Bruce, acting to protect his emotional attachment to his hair length, wants like ½ an inch off.
Precisely. And this brings us to the core issue, which is information asymmetry.
Right.
The stylist has the technical expertise, the spatial awareness, and the actual tools.
Yeah.
Bruce only has his internal emotional desire.
And a mirror.
Yeah, and because Bruce is sitting there, immobilized, looking at himself in a mirror, which, by the way, is psychologically jarring because we rarely stare at ourselves for 45 minutes straight while strangers touch us.
It's so uncomfortable.
It is. He feels completely powerless.
It is intensely vulnerable. It's like walking into the cockpit of a commercial airliner, looking at the pilot saying, just fly safely, and then going back to sit in your assigned seat.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right, because fly safely is a sentiment. It's a vibe. It is not a flight plan. And you are just sitting back there hoping the pilot's definition of safely doesn't involve barrel roll.
That is a brilliant analogy, because what happens when a client is in the back of the plane, entirely driven by the fear of those barrel rolls?
They freak out.
They resort to defensive communication. The source text explicitly highlights Bruce's fear of the stylist cutting too much off. Yep. When people are afraid of a severe outcome, like losing all their hair, an outcome that is completely irreversible in the short term, right? They communicate in ways that are overly cautious, highly restrictive, or, ironically, incredibly vague.
Oh, I have absolutely done this. You try to micromanage the unmicromanageable.
Yes.
You say things like, just barely touch it, or just dust the invisible split ends, or my favorite, I want it shorter but keep the length, which makes 0 sense.
It makes no logical sense at all, but it makes perfect emotional sense to the person in the chair.
Right.
Let's actually analyze the specific phrase the text gives us for Bruce. He wants a simple trim, but doesn't want too much off. Think about the linguistics of that defense mechanism.
Okay.
He uses the word simple to project ease and minimize the request. Uses trim, which is a semantic trap we will get to in a moment.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
And then he uses negative framing. Don't take too much off.
He is defining what he doesn't want rather than what he actually does want.
Exactly. And the phrase, too much, is the ultimate qualitative failure. It is completely subjective. And here is where another psychological framework comes into play.
Lay it on me.
The illusion of asymmetric insight.
The illusion of asymmetric insight. Okay, unpack that for me.
It's a cognitive bias. It's where we believe that we understand other people better than they understand us.
Okay.
But crucially, we also often believe that our own internal states are far more transparent to others than they actually are. We think our desires are obvious.
So Bruce thinks, like, I've said simple trim. I am clearly projecting my fear of losing length. This stylist must inherently understand the vision I have in my head because it feels so vividly clear to me.
Yes, Bruce is experiencing the illusion of asymmetric insight. He assumes the stylist shares his internal baseline.
But they don't?
No, the stylist cannot read his mind. The stylist is relying on the external communication provided.
Right.
And while Bruce thinks he's protecting himself by keeping his instructions vague and heavily caveated with things like just a little and not too much,
he's actually sabotaging it.
He is actually withholding the precise data the stylist needs to do a good job.
By being vague and defensive, Bruce is engineering the exact disaster he is trying to prevent, because the stylist is left totally guessing.
Yeah, if Bruce just mutters, simple trim but don't cut too much, the stylist has to interpret his emotional fear rather than execute a clear architectural plan.
Right.
The stylist might become overly cautious, just pretending to cut the hair so they don't trigger a meltdown.
Which I'm sure happens all the time.
Oh, constantly. resulting in a haircut that doesn't actually remove the damage or change the shape at all. So Bruce pays $60 and leaves feeling cheated. Or the stylist might default to their own professional interpretation of too much, which might be 2 inches of dead ends. And Bruce goes home devastated.
The fear creates the ambiguity, and the ambiguity guarantees disappointment. It's a completely self-fulfilling prophecy.
It really is.
So how do we usually try to fix this? When we realize our vague emotional pleas aren't working, what is the default human reaction? We reach for the jargon. We reach for the vocabulary of the expert.
And that leads us perfectly into the next phase of our source material. The text specifically outlines the essential vocabulary needed to describe a haircut.
Right.
It highlights terms like trim, layers, and bangs.
Right. And as we established at the start, we all know these words. If you have had hair for more than 5 years, you have encountered this vocabulary.
Of course.
But if we are looking at this as a masterclass in human communication, we need to dissect these terms not just as basic dictionary entries, but as a study in semantics versus pragmatics.
That is exactly the framework we need here. Because the failure in the salon chair is rarely a semantic failure. It is almost always a pragmatic failure.
Okay, for you listening who maybe hasn't taken a linguistics course recently, walk us through the difference between semantics and pragmatics and how it applies to Bruce's haircut.
Sure. So semantics is the literal dictionary definition of a word or phrase. It is the core meaning independent of context.
Okay, the dictionary definition.
Right. Pragmatics, on the other hand, is how context, social dynamics, intent, and environment influence the meaning of language.
The real-world application.
Yes. It is what the speaker actually means in the real world and what the listener understands based on their own context.
A classic example of this is if we are at a dinner table and I ask you, can you pass the salt?
Right.
Semantically, I'm asking a question about your physical ability. Are your arms working? Can you physically lift the shaker?
Exactly.
But pragmatically, I am making a polite request for you to hand me the salt.
Exactly. If I answer, yes, I can, and then just sit there without handing it to you,
you'd be a terrible dinner guest.
I would be. But linguistically, I have understood the semantics, but I've completely failed at the pragmatics.
I love that.
Now, let's apply this to the salon chair. The source text gives us the word trim. Let's look at the semantics of a trim.
Semantically, a trim means to cut away irregular or unwanted parts. It implies maintenance. It implies hitting the refresh button on the status quo.
Correct. In the lexicon of the stylist, a trim generally categorizes the haircut as an element of overall maintenance. It's about preserving the existing perimeter and shape.
Right.
Then the text introduces layers. Semantically, this is a profoundly different category. Layers provide structural dimension.
Okay.
When you introduce layers, you are no longer just maintaining a perimeter, you are altering the weight distribution of the hair.
You're changing the shape.
You are creating movement, removing bulk, or building volume. It is a structural command.
So a trim is about the edges, the borders of the property, but layers are about the interior architecture of the house.
That's a great way to visualize it. And finally, the text gives us bangs, or a fringe. This term categorizes a distinct element of facial framing.
It's the facade. It's the front porch of the house.
Yes, the front porch. So, semantically, these three words, trim, layers, bangs, represent clear, distinct categories of action: maintenance, structural dimension, and facial framing.
Got it.
Bruce is relying entirely on the word trim to do all the heavy lifting in his communication. He's using a semantic category descriptor to act as an insurance policy against his pragmatic fear of loss.
But wait, this is where the whole thing falls apart.
Oh.
This is where I want to push back on the usefulness of learning these vocabulary words at all from this module.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if Bruce just uses the word trim, isn't that incredibly subjective? Even if we agree on the semantics that it means maintenance, the pragmatics are a disaster.
Go on.
Because a trim to Bruce, sitting there in a state of sheer panic, might pragmatically mean cut off exactly 3 millimeters of hair so I feel like I did something, but literally no one else will notice.
Right.
But to an ambitious stylist, a trim, to maintain the health of the hair pragmatically, means taking off all the split fried ends, which could be 3 inches. Knowing the word trim isn't enough if Bruce and the stylist have entirely different pragmatic definitions in their heads.
What is fascinating here is that your pushback hits on the fundamental limitation of qualitative language. You were describing the collision between high context and low context communication styles.
Oh, I love this. High context versus low context. Break that down for us.
In a high-context communication culture, a lot of the meaning is left unsaid. It relies heavily on shared background, mutual understanding, nonverbal cues, and assumed knowledge.
Okay.
In a low-context culture, meaning is explicitly stated in the words themselves. The message is carried by the actual data provided.
So Bruce is treating the salon chair like a high-context environment.
Yes.
He assumes the stylist inherently understands his emotional baseline, his deep attachment to his hair, and his personal definition of too much. He assumes they share a context that they just don't share.
Exactly. He thinks he can use a qualitative word like trim, and the stylist will pragmatically understand his specific boundary. But a salon is actually a forced, low-context environment. The stylist sees dozens of clients a week. They do not share Bruce's emotional history.
They don't know him.
They don't. They need explicit data. They need low-context, highly specific instructions.
This is such a revelation. Vocabulary like trim, or even layers or bangs, simply points to a feature or a general category of action. It does not define the execution.
No, it doesn't.
It tells the pilot what city to fly to, going back to that analogy, but it doesn't give them a flight path, an altitude, or a landing strip.
Precisely. And this gap, the space between a word as a semantic concept and a word as a physical, pragmatic execution, is what I like to call the ambiguity tax.
The ambiguity tax. Okay, explain the tax. Who is paying it and what is the currency?
The ambiguity tax is the emotional, physical, and financial price you pay when you use qualitative, subjective words to describe quantitative, specific desires. When you use vague language to communicate a high-stakes preference, you introduce friction. In the salon, Bruce pays the ambiguity tax in the currency of anxiety while sitting in the chair, and potentially in the physical currency of losing 3 inches of hair he really wanted to keep.
Oh man, we pay this tax everywhere.
We really do.
Think about ordering a coffee. If you go to a specialty shop and ask for a strong coffee, you are paying the ambiguity tax.
Oh, absolutely.
Because strong is qualitative. To you, it might mean a dark roast. To the barista, it might mean a double shot of espresso.
Right.
So you get a drink that makes your heart palpitate, and you are disappointed because you used a subjective word.
It happens in relationships, too.
Oh, for sure.
If you tell a partner, I need you to be more supportive, that is a qualitative request. It is steeped in ambiguity.
What does supportive even mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does it mean doing more household chores? Does it mean listening without offering solution? Does it mean taking your side in a dispute with your mother?
Right.
If you don't define it, you leave the agent, your partner, in this case, guessing. And when they inevitably guess wrong, you pay the ambiguity tax in resentment and conflict.
So back to Bruce. Bruce says trim, meaning don't change me. And the stylist hears trim, meaning clean up the damage. Snipping ensues, the cape comes off, and Bruce pays the ultimate ambiguity tax. He goes home and cries.
It is the classic breakdown of communication. They are using the exact same vocabulary word, but they are not speaking the same language.
Right.
The vocabulary from the ESL module is necessary to categorize the work. We absolutely need to know if we are doing maintenance, structural changes, or facial framing.
We need the semantics.
Yes. But the vocabulary alone is wildly insufficient for managing expectations and alleviating anxiety.
So if we stop at just learning the words trim, layers, and bangs, we are still in the back of the plane while the pilot is doing barrel rolls. We are set up to fail.
We are. To avoid the ambiguity tax, to solve the principal agent problem, and to finally cure Bruce of his anxiety, we have to move beyond basic qualitative vocabulary.
We need a system.
We have to implement the specific strategy that is recommended right there in our source text.
Yes, and this is the turning point of the entire deep dive. This is the antidote to the ambiguity we have been talking about for the last half hour.
It really is.
The source text explicitly highlights the importance of, and I'm quoting the module directly here, giving specific length instructions.
That is the crucial pivot, giving specific length instructions. It sounds almost mundane when you just read it off a page, but conceptually, it is a radical shift in communication strategy.
It takes all the emotion, all the fear, and all the high-context assumptions entirely out of the equation.
Exactly. It shifts the communication from qualitative to quantitative metrics. Specificity acts as the undeniable bridge between the client's internal vision and the stylist's external execution.
Right.
When you move from a subjective term, like Bruce's simple trim, to an objective directive, a specific length instruction, you completely shift the dynamic of the consultation.
You completely neutralize the principal agent problem.
You do. You remove the guesswork. Subjective words like trim, a little bit shorter, or clean it up, rely entirely on interpretation.
They're just feelings.
Right, but specific length instructions, saying 1 inch or half a centimeter, or pointing to a specific line on your collarbone, these are quantitative data points. They cannot be misinterpreted.
It establishes a boundary, a literal mathematical boundary.
It establishes undeniable boundaries. And boundaries are the ultimate form of risk management.
Let's tie that back to Bruce.
Think back to his core fear. He is afraid the stylist will cut too much off. The phrase too much is the enemy here because it is boundless.
Yes.
By giving a specific length instruction, Bruce mathematically defines what too much is. If he says, please take off exactly half an inch, no more, he has instantly quantified his fear and neutralized it.
Because if the stylist agrees to half an inch, they have formed a verbal contract. The pilot now has a flight plan.
The flight plan is filed, and the expectations are perfectly aligned. If we extrapolate this beyond just getting a haircut, this text is touching on a universal principle of professional consultation and scope management.
Scope management, like preventing scope creep in a project.
Exactly like that. In any scenario where a layperson is hiring an expert to perform a service, whether it is getting a haircut, hiring a software developer to build an app, or sitting with a general contractor to renovate a kitchen.
Right.
Moving from qualitative descriptors to quantitative instructions is the fastest, most effective way to prevent scope creep and build trust.
Oh, that makes total sense. If I tell a contractor I want a warm and cozy living room, I am handing them a qualitative descriptor.
Which is dangerous.
It is. They might interpret that as dark brown paint and heavy velvet curtains when all I pragmatically meant was installing dimmer switches for the lights.
Exactly.
I am paying a massive ambiguity tax. But if I say, I want the walls painted in this exact hex code and I want 3 dimmable LED light fixtures installed, we are completely aligned. The scope is managed.
Yes. Qualitative language creates space for disappointment and scope creep. Quantitative language creates a roadmap for success.
I love that.
It protects the principal from unexpected outcomes, and it protects the agent from failing to meet unstated expectations.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
Let's operationalize this in the real world. What does this actually mean for you listening when you physically sit down in the salon chair next week?
Right.
Because practically speaking, I know a lot of people worry about being perceived as the difficult client.
Nobody wants to be a Karen.
Exactly. We don't want to walk into a salon with a ruler and start micromanaging a trained professional.
Yeah.
How do we give specific length instructions without sounding like we're telling them how to hold their scissors?
It is a very valid concern. But if we connect this back to the psychology of the principal-agent relationship, it is vital to understand that providing specific length instructions is not about micromanaging the artistic process.
Okay.
It is about establishing a shared reality. A professional stylist actually craves this specificity.
Wait, really? They don't find it insulting?
Not at all. It relieves them of the massive burden of guessing your emotional state. It frees them from the illusion of asymmetric insight.
That makes sense.
No professional wants to be a mind reader. They want a clear brief so they can execute their technical skills flawlessly within the defined parameters.
So to operationalize it, you just combine the vocabulary with the specific quantitative instruction.
Yes.
You don't abandon the word trim, you just anchor it. Instead of Bruce saying, I just want a simple trim, don't take too much off, he should say, I'd like a trim to maintain the current shape, and I want you to take off exactly half an inch from the ends all over.
Exactly. You provide the semantic category maintenance and the pragmatic metric half an inch.
Or, if you don't want to use inches or centimeters, you can use physical landmarks. I do this all the time, actually.
Landmarks are great.
Yeah, I'll say, I want the layers to start exactly at my chin. Not, I want face framing layers because, your face is big. Where are we framing it? The cheekbones, the jaw, the chin is an undeniable objective-specific instruction.
Landmarks are excellent objective metrics. Cut the bangs so they hit exactly at the bottom of my eyebrow.
Yes.
That empowers the client to define the physical boundaries without dictating the technique. It completely neutralizes the anxiety because you have replaced the subjective, terrifying concept of too much with an objective shared measurement.
It is incredibly empowering. It takes the salon chair from a place of passive vulnerability where you are just hoping the agent doesn't ruin your life to a place of active, low-context collaboration.
True collaboration requires a shared, undeniable language. And in the context of altering your physical appearance, specific length is the only language that leaves no room for the ambiguity tax.
This has been absolutely fascinating. We started with an ESL module, and we ended up deconstructing the fundamental flaws in human communication.
It's a deep rabbit hole.
Let's distill the journey we have been on during this deep dive. We started with Bruce and his very relatable, deeply human fear of losing too much hair during what was supposed to be a simple trim.
We examined how that fear is rooted in the very real power dynamic of the principal-agent problem. Bruce is trapped, vulnerable, and relying on an agent whose incentives might not perfectly align with his own desire for risk mitigation.
Then we explored the essential vocabulary laid out in our source: text trim, layers, bangs.
Right.
We learned that these are crucial semantic categories for organizing the work into maintenance, structure, and framing.
But we also discovered the massive pragmatic trap of relying solely on those qualitative words. We assume a high-context mutual understanding that simply does not exist.
Right. Trim to you might be a microscopic dusting, but a trim to the stylist might be a 3-inch chop to ensure optimal hair health.
Exactly.
Relying on those subjective words forces you to pay the ambiguity tax, which led us to the ultimate takeaway from our material. Mastering the consultation requires shifting from qualitative descriptors to quantitative metrics. Yes.
You have to utilize specific length instructions to establish clear mathematical boundaries.
It is the shift from subjective fear and information asymmetry to objective collaboration and scope management.
For you listening, this is your blueprint for your next salon visit. You do not need to fear the chair like Bruce.
You really don't.
You don't have to sit there immobilized under the cape, hoping the pilot doesn't decide to do a barrel roll with your bangs. You now have the communication frameworks to advocate for exactly what you want, using specific, undeniable, low-context instructions.
You establish the contract, and then you can actually relax and enjoy the experience.
Exactly. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a broader question to mull over.
Ooh, okay.
We've spent this time talking about haircuts, but the salon chair is just a microcosm. If a simple misunderstanding over a basic word like trim can cause so much internal panic, anxiety, and a fundamental breakdown in a principal-agent relationship, where else in your daily life are you paying the ambiguity tax?
That's a great question. Where are you using subjective, qualitative words to describe highly specific desires? Think about your romantic relationships. Think about delegating tasks to your team at work. Think about negotiating your salary.
It applies everywhere.
How much anxiety, resentment, and failure could you eliminate simply by giving specific length instructions, by establishing clear quantitative boundaries instead of hoping people can read your mind?
It's a game changer once you start looking at your conversations that way.
Think about it. The next time you find yourself frustrated that someone didn't support you the right way, or a project got entirely derailed by scope creep, remember Bruce in the salon chair. Remember the danger of a simple trim.
Or worse.
Because clarity isn't just about getting a good haircut. It is about ensuring that the reality you live in actually matches the one you are asking for.